CBS Sports ranked all of the 32 NFL head coaches by their big game resume. Okay. There was a bunch of inexperienced on the big stage guys. There was 18 of the 32, actually. Then you had the frequent absentees, which was Dan Quinn of the Washington Commanders. And where Pittsburgh Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin fell into place here is endangered champions. Quote, these coaches reached the mountaintop years ago and they may still guide playoff appearances with regularity, but they've recently struggled to convert postseason entries into ultimate glory. Those three include Sean Payton of the Denver Broncos, Mike McCarthy of the Dallas Cowboys, and Pittsburgh Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin. Quote, Tomlin is unique in that he's both, one, already entrenched as an all-timer, and two, still widely respected as one of the game's best motivators. Even so, his Steelers have proven more scrappy than special for a long time now. Since an AFC title game bid in 2017, he's gone 0-4 in playoff games over the last 6 years. You're looking at Mike Tomlin as an endangered big game resume head coach. I don't think I disagree with that one. I think Mike Tomlin is on the verge of being less relevant if he doesn't win a playoff game. Signs an extension, so the Steelers aren't getting rid of him. But I do think if you go 0-3 these next 3 years in the playoffs, that your next contract is not as guaranteed as this one was coming up. And I believe that the Pittsburgh Steelers could be looking, let's move on a little bit and see where else a window could open if you go 0-3 over the next 3 years. I think that's a long shot that they do, but I don't think anybody expected them to go 0-4 over the last 6 years. So it's a tall task to accomplish and one to overcome. At the same time, I think Mike Tomlin is one playoff game away or one playoff win away from us completely ignoring everything else and who cares, whatever. It doesn't matter. You've shut it all down and won a playoff game. Great. Sounds good. We'll move on and talk about other stuff. You think Tomlin is endangered? You think he's on the verge of irrelevance if he doesn't continue to win?
The verge of irrelevance changes my perspective to this question. Endangered as far as his job, I don't think I'm ever going to sit up here and say he's endangered because of his job. Even if he goes 0-3, I understand that that's hard to believe if he goes 0-3 the next 3 years that he'd be given another contract, but it is, in fact, the Pittsburgh Steelers. So again, I'm never
that he'd get a contract in 3 years. You think it'd be guaranteed that he'd get a contract in 3 years if he didn't win a playoff game in 3 years?
How many excuses crop up between now and then? Because the last time these contract situations came around, the excuses were Kenny Pickett gone. The excuses were Matt Canada gone. So what other excuses crop up here? Does TJ Watt get injured? Knock on wood, that doesn't happen. What other excuses crop up? And if he goes, winning seasons the next 3 years and runs into Patrick Mahomes all 3 times, I still think there's a way that he loses 3 playoff games in the next 3 years, and it's still probably 60-40 or 70-30 that he gets a new contract, just because it's Art Rooney and the Steelers and Mike Tomlin. It's just who they are. If it was any other franchise, this isn't a question. Yeah. But I do think that endangered goes to his legacy because it has been a long time since he has been productive in the playoffs. And I think the further away you get from that 2017 AFC Championship game, the more it becomes, almost a meme, but it becomes his legacy. He was a guy that was great at being a middle of the road coach, great at getting the best out of his players, but not getting the most out of them in the postseason. And that's going to be something that follows him throughout his entire, lifetime and past that.
Yeah, I think I agree with that one. The legacy is certainly getting there. We're definitely getting to the border, to the line there. I think at the same time, he understands that. This is the first time I feel like Mike Tomlin understands that his legacy is going to take a hit. And the first time I think he cares. I think it's the first time that Mike Tomlin looks at the situation and says, I don't want my legacy to take a hit. I don't want to be known as the coach that couldn't win a playoff game. And he's going to try to do something about it. So I agree with that one. I do think that he's on the verge of his legacy taking a major blow. 70. You make a good point with the excuses of the, TJ. It's all about timing. Does Russ go down in week 18 and then you're screwed? Does Arthur Smith stink? Does TJ Watt go down against the Ravens last week of the season? There's a million questions. But I think if none of them, if you go the next 3 years and maybe one of the 3 years you have a really good excuse, I think the timing of the excuse also helps. If the excuses come year 1, year 2, and there's no excuse year 3, there's something to think about. If the excuse is not there year 1, year 2, and it is there in year 3, all right. I could see where you're coming from with the 70-30. I get what happens. But I don't know. We talked about this a long time ago. We'll talk about it every year since until he wins a playoff game. But Mike Tomlin needs to win some playoff games because this conversation it's pointless and it does not happen the second that he wins one. He doesn't have to win multiple. He's only got to win one. And then you put this in the back burner and who cares until he doesn't win more playoff games. And then you have those conversations. Just to finish the rest of that list there, the lightning in a bottle. These coaches have led legitimate title bids, but most of their success has so far been confined to a small stretch. Zach Taylor, Doug Peterson, Nick Sirianni, and then forever on the doorstep is Sean McDermott, Matt LaFleur, Jim Harbaugh, John Harbaugh. I don't know if I agree with the John Harbaugh one, and Kyle Shanahan, and the big game standard setters. This one's wild to me. This one is wild to me. And this is not an NFL show, so if you want to leave, I get it. But this is why. The big game standard setters, there are 2 of them. Andy Reid is the first one. Sean McVay is the second one. I don't know if I agree with that one. I don't know if I'm putting Sean McVay as a standard setter. He had one great big game, won a Super Bowl. Awesome. He's been to 2, lost the other one. I mean, and hasn't been to the playoff or hasn't been there since. So I don't know. I don't know about that one. I don't know if I agree with that one.
The NFL's love affair with Sean McVay never ceases to amaze me because, I mean, he's a great coach, but again, the one he lost, he scored 3 points and he had one of the most prolific offenses in the history of football. You scored 3 points. I get it. It was Belichick and the Patriots, but 3 points
doesn't matter
in a Super Bowl.
3 points.
Come on.
Yep. I agree. Wild take. Don't agree with that one whatsoever.